Real quick, thanks for joining us on this episode. We know that as a healthcare professional, your time is precious, but so is sharing your vital health information with your community, and that's never been more important than today. That's where CapCut comes in. CapCut is the intuitive, all-in-one video editing app designed for speed. Forget the complicated software. With CapCut, you can trim patient education videos, add professional captions for accessibility, and incorporate clear voiceovers in minutes. Streamline your workflow by using our preferred editing software, the one that I use personally, and you can find that link in the podcast show notes.
One thing I realized is a lot of times when I was waiting for that perfect moment to happen, a perfect 2 hour window where I can sit down and create content with the perfect lighting and the perfect audio, that moment doesn't come. And if anything, that prevents me from creating the content. So I'd rather just do it versus like think about having a dedicated day, time, the perfect environment to create that content.
Welcome back to MedCreator 101. I'm your host, Dr. Dustin Portella, board-certified dermatologist. And as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mimi Banks, the founder of MB Social.
Today, we have our friend Dr. Tia Paul. She's a board-certified dermatologist trained at both Harvard Medical School and MIT, is the founder of Balanced Skin Dermatology and Aesthetics, and a skincare educator with over 400,000 followers across social media. She specializes in medical and cosmetic dermatology, and she translates complex clinical knowledge into accessible, engaging content. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Paul.
Thank you for having me.
So before we start, we'd like to get to know our guests personally. Are you open to answering a few rapid-fire questions?
Sure.
So fill in the blank. The hardest word for you in medical school was?
Oh, I remember in dermatology, there was this word called telangiectatic macularis eruptiva perstans. Dr. Portola, you might know, TMEP.
Yeah, that's why we call it TMEP. It's way easier.
Exactly.
Dustin, what was the hardest word for you?
Oh, boy. I don't know. I had a pretty good grasp on it because my dad was an anatomy and physiology teacher. So I grew up from the time I was a kid, like learning these words. I was going to the cadaver lab in junior high. And so I had good familiarity with medical terms from a younger than average age, I would say.
Lucky for you, I'm trying to spit out English right now, so I can't even imagine what that would be like. Medical terms. All right, Tia, fill in the blank. Med school made you more paranoid about blank, but way calmer about blank.
Probably more paranoid about short-term exams and tests, and overall calmer in the sense this too shall pass. We have so many tests, so many ways we are put on the spot, but this too shall pass.
And if you had to translate that into anything skincare related or dermatology related, more paranoid about and more calmer about.
I'm very paranoid about the 10-step skincare routines and too many skincare products on the face. I think it does more harm than good. And calmer about people are interested in skincare. People are interested in taking care of themselves. I think that overall is a very positive thing.
And then fill in the blank again. What is the most overrated skincare rule?
Yeah, all the trends, people try to get like a lot of views on social media. So they create all these trending skincare. But in reality, I think simple and targeted skincare is ideal for most people.
Dustin, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that that's solid. People come up with fancy names and recreate ways to use products. And some of them are very innovative, but most of them are just gimmicks. And I think just stick to the basics, stay consistent, and you're going to be better in the long run.
What about this one? Things patients stress about that you personally ignore.
Oh, this I have a good one. Whenever we do full body skin checks and we're looking at people's mole and women care about, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I forgot to shave. I was like, trust me, I'm so focused on trying to make sure your skin looks good or like none of them are skin cancer or something. I'm not looking at if you have hair growth or not.
That is a good one. Dustin, what about you?
Toenail fungus. I don't worry about toenail fungus if the patient doesn't bring it up. If I see it on a full skin exam, I was taught this in residency. I think my chief resident asked, if you're doing a skin exam and you notice that the patient has toenail fungus, what do you do? And I was like, well, obviously you offer him terbinafine or you can offer him Jublia. And I go through all the medical options. He's like, no, you don't say anything about it unless they bring it up because it's a challenging thing to treat. For most people, it's never really going to be a problem for them. So I don't worry about things that are not bothering the patient. And I, in many cases, let them bring it up unless I notice something that could become a bigger problem, like lichen planopilaris. If they haven't brought up hair loss, but I'm like, oh, they've got a bad problem going on, then I'll bring it up. But things like toenail fungus, I don't worry about.
I will note that for the next time I go to a dermatologist. Tia, I may be coming to you for a skin check because I actually really do need one. I'm very curious. I think we've talked about this, Dustin, a little bit, but Tia, what would you be if you weren't a dermatologist?
I would probably, I don't know, I love interior designing and I would probably still would want to have my own business, but expand with interior designing.
Dustin?
Oh, I don't remember what my answer was last time, but it would have been probably an educator. Probably would have become a teacher like my dad. But the farther I get in life, I really like business and probably would start a business of some kind.
Amazing. So let's talk about Tia's business a little bit. So you have a strong clinical background, Harvard and MIT training, chief resident, published researcher, and dermfluencer to add to your resume. 400,000 followers across social. What made you start on social?
This started back in 2020 where we saw this opportunity, right? Pandemic time. There was people had a little bit more time on their hands. I've always wanted to be an educator. That was like very high up on my list. And I do this thing in my life. Every couple of years, I write down my goals. And like by goals, I mean not just the goal for that year, but for the next 5 years, next 10 years. And being an educator has always been one of my top goals as a chief resident, even in med school and whatnot. But I realized the best thing about social media is you have this huge audience, right? We could be very good clinicians in our clinic, but we're still limited by X number of patients in clinic. But the pro and the biggest advantage of social media is you could get your message out to so many millions and even billions of people.
And so you had time in 2020. What then made you take the leap? What platform did you say you wanted to attack? What kind of content did you create? Very curious.
So again, my number one goal was not like, oh my God, I want to get to the point where I have to work with brands and stuff. That was never my goal. And in fact, even to this day, I focus more on building my personal brand. And if that aligns with partnership with other brands, great. If not, that's fine too. So my goal was again along the lines of education. So back then I realized, of course, skincare, everybody was interested in skincare, but my focus has always been focusing on skin of color, just because this is a huge population and there is such a high need. There's a very high demand for clinicians, for physicians, for dermatologists that have experience, that are comfortable with treating darker skin. Because as we all know, Dr. Portola, that even in medical school, in residency, our focus has not been on skin of color. And a lot of simple concepts like a tretinoin cream for acne might not be well tolerated by patients with darker skin. Of course, technologies like laser, microneedling, you have to do it with different technology, different setting. So I found this unmet need out there and I just started putting out simple, everyday concepts that I see in clinic, but I started putting it out there on social media. And I saw a lot of people found that to be very relatable. So since then, for the last 5 years, my focus has been to create content that number one is relatable to a lot of people. Maybe even when people see me, the way I talk, my body language, my skin color, skin tone, maybe some people are like, those are the exact same problems I have too. And now I found a dermatologist who is comfortable addressing that.
And did you start to be very technical on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook?
Well, a lot of us, I think we were having fun in the beginning trying to figure out what we were doing, right? I think in the very, very beginning, just putting yourself out there, talking to a camera, not knowing who the audience was. I think in the very beginning, it was like something different, right? But a lot of us that started doing it back in the day, I guess other people that were not afraid to do that. Like I was never afraid to put myself out there. I started with TikTok just because TikTok is like this wild, wild west, right? So I would just put the content out there and didn't care about how perfect it looked in terms of prettiness, like on Instagram. And I saw a lot of the content was doing very, very well and it went to all different parts of the world. And that kind of motivated me to keep going. And I had a pretty strong growth on TikTok back in 2021, 2022. So then I started repurposing some of my videos to Instagram.
So that's actually interesting because Dustin and I talked to a lot of people who either start on Facebook or start on Instagram. It was very rare that people started on TikTok, but I think that's also really smart that you repurpose your content.
Yeah, I actually still am not very active on Facebook, but it's mostly like TikTok. And then I put some of that content on Instagram.
Now, you said you weren't afraid to put yourself out there, which is not the norm among people, especially physicians who are getting active on social media. Was this just a confidence you've had your whole life? Is this something you developed through other experiences along your education pathway where you just felt comfortable getting on camera and sharing the knowledge you had?
No. I mean, I was always a very shy kid. So I grew up in India, had a very different, strong British accent. I came to the United States when I was 18 years old. But one thing about me is I'm not scared about taking risks because I firmly believe in you have one life, one opportunity, go big or go home, right? So yes, a lot of times everything has been uncomfortable, coming to a different country and starting everything from scratch, that was uncomfortable. Going through medical school as an international student, on visas and trying to get into dermatology where I've always been told it's like next to impossible on a visa. If I could make all that work, I'm sure putting myself out there and talking to a camera could not be the end of the world. And as long as, again, you're being true to yourself, I try to do everything and say everything the way I would treat my own family. I try not to like put content out there just to get more number of followers or more number of likes. Sometimes I'm well aware that certain video might not do so well because of the type of content I'm putting, but I'm putting the content out there, hopefully more as an education that even if 2 or 5 or 10 people benefit from it, that's more than getting like 100,000 likes on it.
And that's a really good perspective to put out there for people. As a medical content creator, you've already done all the hardest things, and getting yourself on camera is not going to be the hardest thing you've had to do. And you can step forward and just do it.
I love that. Actually, Dustin and I were talking about that this morning about how to just get up and just start it. And it's not going to be polished. It's not necessarily going to be pretty, but actually putting something out there is the first step.
And I have to commend you on maintaining your goal. From the very beginning, you wanted to educate, and you've maintained your values and your goals that come across in your content now 5, almost 6 years later. I don't know if that was challenging at times, if there were opportunities where you could have maybe compromised for, a brand deal or anything like that, or has it always been very straightforward that if it doesn't align, it doesn't align, I'm not going to do it. This is my mission and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah, so my number one mission has always been like, I am Dr. Tia Paul. It took me a decade and a half to get to where I am. I could lose all of it in a second. So be careful what I'm choosing to move forward with, because at the end of the day, our license is on the line. Like anything that we say is taken way more seriously than like a beauty influencer coming and saying something. So yes, I have turned down a lot of deals. And even up till today, every partnership that I've had are inbound. So the brand has probably come up to me. And now I'm at a level I work as a lot of advisory roles for startup companies or even laser companies or even other aesthetic startups. And the goal is, again, to just really put the information I know that I'm truly an expert about and probably in a way that it's helpful to other people. Not the fact that, oh, I'm a Harvard trained dermatologist, so anything coming out of my mouth, it could be crap, but like people might believe it more because I'm Harvard trained dermatologist. But I really, really try not to do that. Anything that I say is probably something I 100% believe in.
Talking about content and talking about what you believe in and how you've had this since the beginning and you're really rooted in it, I just wanted to reflect back a little bit again, going back to the tactics of how you build your content. Do you have a framework that you adhere to? Do you have main themes that you make sure to integrate? How do you build that?
So I think, again, the number one thing for me over the years has been how do I create content that is, again, professional, educational, but also in a very relatable fashion. So there are 3 things I kind of stick to. One is, of course, creating medical content around dermatology. Number 2, I do portray and give a little glimpse into my personal life as a mom of 2 little ones. And the third thing is, again, this whole journey as an immigrant, as somebody who's literally had nothing. I think I've made comment about this when I moved to this country. I didn't even know how to pronounce Chanel. And going from there to building my whole business, right? The way I built it over the last 2 years was kind of like all in real time. When I was building the structure of my practice, I had put that out on social media as well. And in the last 2 years, how my practice took off, and now I have these patients that are flying in from all over the world to come see me. I think a lot of people saw that happening in real time, and they could see this brown girl like hustling and trying to do it all, and they found it very relatable. While I'm talking about how I had a 1-year-old at that time, and the struggles of a mom. I mean, you can relate to that. Dustin, you can relate to that too. But keeping it real and not just like, oh my God, I have this picture perfect world, And bad things happen to us too. We got robbed last year out of nowhere, like putting all that out there. And again, like just portraying the real you versus like this like perfect vision of you, I think is what makes it very important.
When we first met, you were working for another practice at the time, and now you own your own practice. And I'm curious if you could touch on the role that social media had in the decision to start your own practice. Was that always the goal? Did social media make that easier? Because many doctors that take to social media want to do it simply to get patients in the door, to help people discover them. And I'm curious the role that social media played in starting and growing your business.
Yeah, so I did not start social media with the goal of, okay, one day I'm going to have my own practice and things like that. I started creating content on social media to kind of amplify my personal brand, right? And at that time, when I first started, to be honest, I didn't have a green card. I was on visa, so I couldn't even come up with any company. At that time, I was working for a big hospital group, and then big hospital groups have limitations. And as soon as I realized that it was going to be a hard, challenging thing to kind of balance both, I decided to walk away from that. And it was a pretty well paid job, and I think a lot of times physicians, we get very comfortable with our pay, but it's okay. It's okay to take that risk. So I walked away from that. And then I joined a smaller practice for only about 8 months. I loved it. I have only great things to say about the practice. But I guess what I realized at that time was there was enough people out there that were looking for me, that were looking for my expertise, especially as I was comfortable in skin of color. So yes, that gave me the confidence to walk away from another, secure W-2 job and, start from scratch. And then I think I still have a little bit of an imposter syndrome because on my socials, I was just sharing my before and after results. Again, in a way, I was telling a story, right? But a lot of people found that very, very relatable. And now my practice just really, really took off. And I've, again, patients coming from all over. We're looking to open our second location. As of last Friday, my husband quit his corporate job to help us with all our growth. It's been amazing.
I saw that. That's congratulations. That's huge. And I remember you even telling me at AAD, was it last year, or even like the year before, how patients were flying in. So I can only imagine now with social media and your following and growth, what that's done for your practice.
Yeah. And at the same time, I am also somebody, I go above and beyond for my patients, like a lot of physicians, right? We try to do our very best for our patients. And I'm sure every physician, we do that, right? But social media gives you that opportunity to amplify that message, right? Like a lot of times, sure, there is word of mouth. I mean, that's how my practice has been doing well too, word of mouth. But with social media, that word of mouth spreads faster. But again, you got to be careful. Like if I did like maybe 10 brand partnership per day, per week, that may or may not have helped me, right? I don't know. So I try to be very careful about how I work with other brands, other laser companies. I am KOL for laser companies too. But I try to, again, stick to the whole main mission of being educational and being relatable.
Speaking of relatable, something that I'm like very fascinated about is that we talked about medical jargon, we talked about words pronouncing. When you're talking about, science-based information and biology, how did you learn to communicate complex information in such a compelling, relatable way?
It was trial and error. Like sometimes, like some of the videos that I thought was very educational, but maybe I used some technical terms, didn't do so well. And then I would look at the comment section to see exactly what people were trying to say. Because it's again, social media is a two-way communication as well, right? You're listening to your audience as well. And then I would take those comments and create a video by replying to that comment. And over time, I realized people don't need to know too many complex things. Say, for example, lasers for skin of color. The simple message that certain lasers are not safe in skin of color, certain lasers are safe on skin of color. That simple message tends to do much better than me explaining like the science behind why and why not some lasers are safe and some are not.
How do you decide then if you're talking about a subject like hyperpigmentation? How do you know when to say how to spot it, how to treat it, what ingredients are good for it, what products, like the do's and don'ts? How do you decide how to break that down into what's relevant?
A lot of times it's like questions that come up in clinic every week. Because at the end of the day, I'm a full-time clinician. I see patients. That's how I get all my knowledge, my information, or that's how I try to understand what are people looking for? What are the most common questions, right? So a lot of times the ideas come from clinic and then I just post it out there on social and then look at the comment section. And that's how more videos come out of that.
Very good. When it comes to the nuts and bolts, because you are busy, you're a mom of two, you're running a practice, you are an advisor to many different companies. When you're creating content, is it something you sit down and you batch and you film a bunch of things at once, or are you squeezing it in moment to moment? I'd like to learn about the content creation process. We kind of understand the ideation, but when do you sit down to record? Do you have a team that helps you on the editing and posting side? What does it look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, I think a lot of us struggle with this, right? In an ideal world, I would like to sit down and batch create and all that. But yeah, my time is so limited. Sometimes, it will be, yeah, like an hour of the day, like at the end of the day at 11 p.m. or because I don't have dedicated social media content time. So I try to find like an hour or so where I'm creating, like the talking videos. And then rest of the time, most of it is like I shoot content on my phone on the go. I'm seeing a patient, I'm about to do a procedure. If it seems like it's something that could be relatable to a lot of people online, I'll ask my patient for permission. And most of the time, a lot of people are willing to share or like before and after results and whatnot. But one thing I still struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of people will find this relatable too, a lot of times it's not the actual task of creating the content, but it's the idea that, oh my God, I still have to create content that stresses us out a lot, right? It's like this nonstop to-do list, right? And that is something I'm still to like figure out. Like over the weekend, like I spent all my time with my kids. But at the back of my head, I'm still thinking, oh my God, I need to like find an hour or two to sit down and create content.
Do you create a content calendar? Do you create scripts? Like when you're coming up with these ideas and ready to film, what's your process like?
Right. So I will sit down and write down the ideas first. And in terms of scripts, I don't know. A lot of times I just speak on camera without creating any script. I find that to be more raw and authentic. But when it comes to posting, yes, I will have some sort of a content calendar in my mind, but I don't put it down on Excel sheets. I am not like, this is still a part-time job for me. This is not my full-time job. I try to do it to the point where I'm having fun with it and not like, oh my God, I have a task, I have an Excel sheet and all that. I'm not that hardcore.
And are you editing your own videos? Do you have somebody that helps you with that?
I have somebody from India that helps me with it, but a lot of times the simple videos I'll edit myself on CapCut or on Edits or TikTok itself. I find them pretty helpful.
Is there any equipment that you've found to use that's been a game changer for you? Or is it mostly just your phone and, a window? What kind of tools do you use?
Yeah, I don't even use any special lighting. Mostly it's just my phone and wherever I am, maybe hopefully with some good lighting, but sometimes I use a microphone. A lot of times I don't even use a microphone. Again, I have seen, at least in my experience, like some of the videos where I did with like the perfect lighting, the perfect, microphone and whatnot, may or may not have performed that well, but sometimes the more authentic ones tend to perform best.
It's so funny, Dustin, because we were just having this conversation about what a setup looks like and what the impact of perfection can do. Because your whole vibe, because we're in California, we say vibe, your whole brand also is about being authentic and relatable. So the more perfect that you come across, the more.
Almost the more distance it creates between the audience.
Yeah, exactly. So it's also a really good lesson for people. So you don't need an extensive content calendar. You don't need an extensive setup. You don't need this really in-depth script. Have an idea, understand what you want to say, and try it. Tia, that's really incredible.
Yeah, because one thing I realized is a lot of times when I was waiting for that perfect moment to happen, a perfect 2 hour window where I can sit down and create content with the perfect lighting and the perfect audio, that moment doesn't come. And if anything, that prevents me from creating the content. So I'd rather just do it versus like think about having a dedicated day, time, the perfect environment to create that content.
Yeah, I love the quote that I heard recently. Inspiration is perishable, from one of my favorite thinkers, Naval Ravikant. And if you have an idea and you don't act on it, it's going to pass. You're going to forget it. That flow of idea is going to leave you. So inspiration is perishable. And often you're better to just take advantage of whatever the circumstances are to let that idea come into existence. So I know your time is kind of short because you've got clinic today, but I do want to kind of finish off asking about social media and your relationship with industry. You mentioned you're a KOL for different laser companies. You have your own skincare brand, Lion Pose, that you've launched, and you consult with many other brands. And I'm curious the relationship that social media has had to helping create those kinds of opportunities for you.
So a lot of my partnerships with different brands, whether it's skincare or laser, ranges from advisory roles. So even with Lion Pose, it's a advisory role as a medical advisor for the company, to even like, when there is a launch of a product, being like bigger companies like CeraVe, Neutrogena, Murad. I've worked with them to the capacity of bringing a new product to the market. But a lot of times I'm even involved with formulation, especially for startups, involved in the whole like formulation process and also from the business side of things. Because now that I've worked on multiple projects and I realized kind of like you, Dustin, I really love the business side of things. So one of my other latest project is as the chief medical officer of aesthetic for this wellness and aesthetic startup called Blue Sanil. Their first location just opened in Scottsdale, Arizona. But over there, the goal is not so much as a medical director, but more so, hey, how can we actually take this idea and take it and scale it and open, other locations, and how can we enhance our patient experience. So a lot of it is because it's fun, right? Like it's not like I don't have to do a majority of the things I do. It's because I love to do what I do. And it almost gives you a high, right? I can easily stop working on a lot of my projects. I'm not doing it for the financial reasons. I'm doing it because it's fun. If you're really good at something and if you're having fun, money will come. But if you're just chasing money, I don't think you may or may not get happiness out of it.
Right. And it sounds like a lot of those opportunities, were brought to you because you had that presence on social media, allowed you to get those connections. No doubt many of them would come if you weren't active on social media, but it probably accelerated that.
100%. Again, to get the message out to like millions of people versus like, a smaller scale of people. So yeah, I definitely think social media creates a lot of opportunities. Sometimes you didn't even know. 5 years ago, I would have no clue where I am at right now. And I would hope 5 years from now, I still don't know how life is going to be. And definitely social media helps to come up with a lot of opportunities as long as you're being careful about what you're choosing to do.
Well, I think you've given us a masterclass in how to create authentic, engaging content and really just follow your passion. Stick to your values, do the things that you love to do, and all of the other stuff comes as a secondary result from that. So we can't thank you enough for your time. Before your clinic today, we appreciate you joining us on the MedCreator podcast. Where can people find you on social media if they'd like to follow you?
Sure, you can just look for Dr. Tia Paul.
And we'll make sure to link that in the podcast show notes. If you found this episode helpful, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts and send us a message on Instagram at MedCreator101. We'd love to hear your feedback, and we'll see you on the next episode.